Hey everybody, Fishman here, welcome to another video. The upcoming ammonium chloride test for the sponge filter has made me realize I have yet to do a DIY version of a sponge filter on the channel. Now I have made a few in the past for clients, but I've never done one for you guys, so I thought I would take care of that right now. Now I'm not going to build just a regular one. I think I'm going to make a few changes, and hopefully they'll be improvements, but we'll see, and you guys can always let me know below, of course. The only problem with doing this right now is I have no good quality open pore sponges in the shop. I have ordered them. Actually, I ordered them back near the end of November of last year, and they still haven't shown up. So I'm going to make do with these. These are intake sponges for some pumps. The pumps I used them for were actually, I used them in line, so I didn't really need the sponge. So they've been sitting around the shop for quite some time. They're okay. They're not the best quality, but they will suffice until something else comes in, but at least it will give me a chance to work out some of the mechanical details for the filter, waiting for that to come up. So what I'm going to do here is, this is the jig I had put together for using the table saw to round out square pieces of acrylic before I put them on the lathe. So I thought I'd just make a few small changes to it, and it is a very good way of rounding out these sponges. Now, of course, I didn't really need to do that. They're perfectly fine in their rectangular format, but almost every sponge you're going to buy online or whatever, they're pretty much all round. Some of them are triangular and some are other shapes, but the round ones are the most common, so I thought I would do that. And also, it is about roughly the size. I mean, I did trim the jig you can see there. I trimmed it so that it would fit a piece of tubular acrylic I have, so that will help as well. So, like I said, I'm going to make a couple changes. The first change is, you can see here, is I'm not just using a single sponge. One of the problems and one of the drawbacks, I think, for sponges is if you have one in your aquarium and you clean it, you do reduce its ability to filter your water for a short period of time. Now I'm talking about mechanical filtration, I'm talking about biological filtration. So you do set it back a little bit when you clean it. So instead of having just one, I thought I would make 3 sponges, and then these can be rotated. You gotta clean the top one, shift it to the bottom, and so on and so forth. And over a period of time, they obviously all get cleaned, and so one will probably be doing more mechanical, and one will be doing more biological, and of course, I guess the one in the middle will be doing a bit of both. That is the plan anyway. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a reservoir on the bottom, but that is mostly just for weight. I'm going to cut this in half, as where my finger is there, because I think I may end up building 2 of these in the end. But what the reason for that is, usually sponge filters, the ones I've bought anyway, have some sort of encased lead or something in the bottom to keep them upright. And well, the other change I want to make is, instead of just having that as dead space, I thought I would drill a bunch of holes and have that bottom space, which is going to have gravel in it, have access to the flow from the top. So water will be drawn through it. Not very quick flow rate or anything, but enough that some water will go through it, and hopefully a little bit of biological filtration will happen there as well. Now also, because of everything that I keep in my aquariums and the holes I'm going to be drilling, there will also be plenty of space in there as a mini refugium for shrimplets and scuds and other microorganisms and stuff. So that is another good thing, because it will also supply food for fish and stuff, and other sorts of breakdown of detritus and stuff. So this is my original plan. I was going to have the 3 sponges wedged between these 2 plates. I ended up not really using the top plate because there was enough friction, but I kept it anyway, just in case as this ages, it needs a little bit more reinforcing. As you can see here, and in some of the prior clips, and actually in a lot of videos I put up, whenever I need a round disc, I take sheet acrylic and I cut a square out of it, and I cut it a little bit larger than I need, and then drill a 1-inch hole in the middle of it, and then either put it straight onto the arbor and the lathe and make it into a round disc, or if you remember from the beginning of the video, I take that template and mount it in that, and then take off most of the roughness on the table saw, and then finish it up on the lathe. Now that leaves a 1-inch hole in the bottom of this, and that would be a problem normally, except again, as you saw in this piece here, this tube is going to be the lift stack, and I capped the end of it with a piece of 1/4 inch, and then waited till it was fully cured, and then put that on the lathe and rounded that down. And also at the same time, I took it slightly less than 1 inch, like probably about 2/1000th, and that way it is a little bit easier to take this in and out. I don't want this to be permanently mounted, so I'm using it here as a guide, and I have to be very careful because if I put too much methylene chloride in here, it's just going to weld the whole thing into one big piece. So I have to be very gentle and make sure that it cures fully before I end up putting that back in. So that's going to be the base, and then this disc here is going to sit on top of this, and as you can see by that stain there, I'm using as much recycle as possible because we're currently in lockdown here for another month, and I really just don't want to run out of stuff like I did last spring and not be able to build anything. So like I said, I'm doing as much reuse as possible, and again, that's where the sponge also fits in. So, like I said, I don't want this to be dead space. This is going to be weighted down with gravel, and it's going to keep everything nice and upright and in the position I want it to be. So I'm going to drill some holes around it, and I don't have an indexer, so I'm just going to do this by eye. And I'm going to drill a few holes all the way around the rim, and this is going to allow a bit of water to flow in through here. And off camera, I am going to take the bottom disc, the one that's going to fit all the sponges on it, like the sponge stack is going to go on top of it. I'm going to drill holes through that too, and that is going to be the top of this, or the lid for it, and that's going to allow water to be drawn up through that. Again, not much, just going to be a little bit, and it'll keep water flowing through here at least a small rate. And as I said earlier, it's going to be a nice home for all kinds of things, and it's going to hopefully improve the biochemistry of the tank. But again, this is just something I want to try out, so it is one of these things that may or may not work out. So there you go, there's a bunch of holes around the rim, and as you can see, I've already put a bunch of holes in what's going to be the cap for this little box, and now all I'm going to do is just weld this on. And this is pretty much the whole filter done. All I have to do after this is take the lift stack and put some holes in that, and of course put together the rigid tubing for the airline. But that's really quite straightforward, and I've shown you many of those before. Now, I'm not really sure if having multiple stages for a sponge filter is going to improve its ability to do anything. And to be honest, I'm not sure how good this sponge is going to be, because it is considerably more porous than I like to use. But again, I have to wait until, if that sponge ever gets here, I'll be switching over to that. But there you go, that fits in nice and tightly, but not tightly enough that I have to worry about snapping any of these joints. And it's just going to be filled. The bottom part is going to be filled completely with gravel, and as the sponge fits on top like this, it's going to cap that, and then as water is drawn in through it, hopefully it'll also draw a little bit through the base as well. So all I need to do now is take a bit of tape, as you can see there, mark where the top of the sponge is going to be, because I don't want this to obviously have holes where there isn't sponge, because it'll just have water go through that. And also, I only had holes go up to pretty much where the middle, or maybe the 1/3 of the top sponge. So I didn't, like I said, I wanted to make sure there's plenty of sponge around it, so I don't have a spot where water is going to get through without having to go through at least a fair amount of sponge. And as you can see, the sponge goes on fairly well, like it's quite snug at this point, so I don't think I'm going to need that top disc at the moment, and I'm just going to keep it for possible later use. And also, I'm not entirely sure of the configuration for this as it goes forward, so this will allow me to make some changes just in case they're required. So there we go. It's all pretty much ready to put in an aquarium. I just have to put gravel in the bottom of this. And the first thing I noticed when I put it in the aquarium, it does need one change that I'm going to do probably pretty much right away, as I'm going to take this apart and dry it out. I didn't have time to do it before this video, but the rod doesn't sit in the center of the tube down there. So what it does is it bubbles near an edge, because the airline tubing obviously just pulls it to the side. So I'm getting a little bit of air leak going up through the sponge, and of course that's not, you know, the optimal way of doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'll do an update there for this, hopefully for Sunday, and then I'll show you that corrected. But it's an easy fix. So as this goes in, it's very straightforward, as you can see. The bubbles are pretty good, and I, like I said, filled up quite full with gravel, and the sponges go down nice and tightly. This obviously is going to take a little while to percolate and work, but I decided to put in this aquarium here because this is the sponge that I'm going to be using for the ammonium chloride tests, and I wanted to show you side by side, because that is a commercial filter I bought. I bought it, quite some time ago, probably around about 20 years at this point, and it's still doing quite well. I mean, there's no problem with it whatsoever, but like I said, sometimes these things are interesting just to see if changes will improve things or not. So this is going to be my take on a sponge filter. It is a little bit different, and one thing I noticed right off the bat, these two filters are hooked up identically. They're hooked up to the same source of air, and you're going to see how much more flow comes out of this one, which is really kind of a thing in its advantage here. That is quite a bit more flow than out of the other one, and I said they're hooked up identically. So anyway, as always, if you like this style of video, please like and or subscribe, and let me know what you think. And as I said, this is going to go on for a little bit, and then we'll see if it's any better or not. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.